A few weeks ago, I became involved in an affair with a neighbor, which is a decision that I now deeply regret and for which I feel genuine remorse. To maintain our privacy during this recounting, I will use fictitious names. My husband, whom I will refer to as Jesse, is 48 years old, and I, known here as Debbie, am 44. We have been married for an extensive 24 years and are the proud parents of 3 adult children. Our family has always resided in the vibrant Las Vegas area, a city known for its entertainment and nightlife. Jesse has dedicated the majority of his working life to a company that supports gaming machines, and he has been quite successful in his role, earning a 6-figure income. I, too, was once a committed member of the workforce, having spent a decade in the casino food and beverage industry until I faced the unfortunate circumstance of being laid off. The pandemic has severely impacted our industry, causing significant devastation, and while there are signs of recovery, many establishments may never return to operation. Although we do not depend on my income for our day-to-day living expenses, I long to rejoin the workforce. This desire is fueled by a need to occupy my mind and provide a distraction from the turmoil I have caused in my marriage. Furthermore, should my husband choose to pursue a divorce as a consequence of my actions, my financial independence may become essential. To provide context, the events that led to the affair unfolded against the backdrop of the pandemic lockdown that Las Vegas experienced from March to June. In March, I was laid off, while Jesse was fortunate enough to maintain his employment, save for a brief 2-week period when all businesses were shut down. Initially, I adjusted to this state of affairs. However, similar to many others, I soon began to feel restless and confined, succumbing to the emotional strain of prolonged isolation. As casinos gradually began to reopen in June, I started to frequent local establishments to alleviate my feelings of restlessness. I developed a routine of visiting casinos shortly after my morning walks, allowing me to spend a few hours there before returning home for a late lunch. This newfound routine provided me with a sense of enjoyment and normalcy amidst the chaos. It was during one of these visits that I encountered a neighbor named Nate. Prior to our meeting, I was unaware that he had been struggling with his own circumstances, as his company had permanently shut down just a few months after the lockdown began. We struck up a conversation, and it soon became clear that, like me, Nate was seeking a temporary escape from his daily life by visiting casinos. After some lively discussion, we decided to explore the casino together, making it a shared experience. Nate was visiting this particular casino for the first time, and as I scanned the gaming floor, I spotted a slot machine that caught my eye. Nate, too, expressed an interest in trying his luck and settled on a similar machine just 2 chairs down from mine. To our delight, our choice of machines proved to be exceptionally fortuitous. We both started winning, each of us accumulating over $200. The thrill of our success kept us glued to the machines for an extended period. Eventually, we opted to cash out and take a break to enjoy some food. I had come prepared, packing a cooler filled with an assortment of fruit, cheese, lunch meat, protein bars, and other snacks, anticipating a lengthy day at the casino. With limited dining options available within the casino, I extended an invitation to Nate to join me for lunch at my car, which he hesitated to accept initially but eventually agreed after I assured him that I was more than happy to share. Upon returning to my car, I opened the tailgate, creating an informal dining area where we could stand and chat while enjoying our lunch. It felt refreshing to stretch my legs after so much time spent sitting in front of the slot machines. After our meal, we decided to take a leisurely stroll around the small downtown area adjacent to the casino. As we walked, we observed the desolate streets and shuttered storefronts, a poignant reminder of the pandemic's devastating impact on our community. The sight was genuinely disheartening, yet we continued to share our thoughts and experiences. After some time, we headed back inside the casino to continue our gambling adventure, remaining close to one another throughout the afternoon. As we were preparing to leave, Nate casually asked if I planned to return to the casino the following day. I responded affirmatively, although I was uncertain about which location I would visit. Nate then suggested we return to the same casino, citing our good luck and the enjoyable time we had shared. I readily agreed, and our conversation led to Nate proposing that he would bring lunch for our next visit, so we could once again enjoy a meal together at my car. The prospect of our next outing felt promising, and with a simple exchange of words, I found myself sealing the deal for what would ultimately spiral into a regrettable chapter in my life. During my drive back home, I initiated a phone call to Jesse, eager to share the events of my day with him. As I recounted my experiences, I mentioned a chance encounter with Nate at the casino. Our conversation unfolded naturally during the entire 40-minute journey, yet I refrained from discussing the specifics of my day. In hindsight, I have come to understand, through various online resources, that this moment marked the beginning of my infidelity. As I typed these words, emotions overwhelmed me, and tears flowed freely down my cheeks as I confronted the gravity of my actions, feeling both foolish and selfish. The following day, I found myself preparing for another rendezvous at the same casino. We decided to have lunch in Nate's truck, a seemingly innocent setting that soon turned celebratory. Along with the meal, Nate had brought a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses, intending to toast our winnings from the day before. However, as our lunch drew to a close and we made our way back into the casino, he leaned in and kissed me. I felt an undeniable urge to reciprocate, and I didn't put up any resistance. Back inside the casino, we resumed our gameplay at the slots, sitting side by side. Yet, the tension between us escalated quickly, and before long, we found ourselves in the spacious confines of Nate's truck. The next hour was a blur of passion and temptation, and as I sit here reflecting on it, I am engulfed by waves of shame and disgust for what I had just done. After we finished, Nate suggested we return to the casino, but I firmly declined the offer, asserting that I needed to go home. I explained that our encounter was a grave mistake and that we could not see each other again. Nate, however, was persistent. He attempted to persuade me that as long as we met in secret at distant locations and avoided any other forms of communication, our secret would remain safe. I stood my ground against his suggestions, emphasized the finality of our situation, gave him a friendly hug, and made my way back home. The weight of the day rested heavily on my shoulders, and I longed to hear Jesse's voice. I called him, and we spoke briefly as I navigated the road back home. Upon reaching my house, I treated myself to the longest, most soothing bath I had ever taken, hoping to wash away the guilt I felt. Later that night, in an effort to regain some sense of normalcy, I prepared Jesse's favorite meal. I slipped into the mini sundress he adored, taking extra care to ensure I showed him the affection he was accustomed to. This routine was familiar. Jesse knew that when I cooked his favorite dish and donned a revealing outfit, he could expect a delightful evening. This practice had been a part of our relationship for the past 25 years, and somehow, it never lost its charm. I felt an intense love for him, perhaps more than ever before. The next 2 weeks passed without incident, allowing me to believe that I had successfully put the mistake with Nate behind me, seemingly untouched by repercussions. Then, one afternoon, Jesse sent a text indicating he would be working late and that I should not worry about dinner, as he planned to grab something on the way home. It was unusual for him not to call when he had the chance, which in hindsight should have raised a red flag for me. When Jesse finally arrived home around 8 p.m., he was accompanied by my brother-in-law, Bill, and his wife, Azil. Their presence was not unusual, as we often spent time together as a close-knit group of friends. However, upon their entry, I sensed an underlying tension in the air. Feeling the need to address this strange atmosphere, I inquired if everything was all right. Jesse then asked me to sit down and indicated that he wanted Bill and Azil to be present as witnesses. A heavy, foreboding feeling settled in my stomach as uncertainty gripped me. With a sense of dread, I listened as Jesse revealed that he had met with Nate's wife earlier that day, who had disclosed everything about my involvement with Nate. My heart raced as I asked him what she had shared. Jesse remained calm but firm, advising me not to feign ignorance. He pulled out his phone and showed me photographic and video evidence of my betrayal, a picture of Nate and me kissing beside his truck. In that moment, tears filled my eyes as I felt the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I attempted to explain, insisting that it was not an ongoing affair but rather a regrettable mistake for which I felt immense remorse. Jesse, unfortunately, was not swayed by my words. He made it painfully clear that the frequency of my indiscretion did not matter to him. The trust that once held our marriage together was shattered. He conveyed to me that our marriage was effectively over. At that moment, I felt a crushing wave of despair, nearly losing consciousness under the weight of my shame and the realization of what I had done. I buried my face in the table, overwhelmed by grief, and the tears streamed down, releasing the emotional weight I had been carrying. My husband, Jesse, and my brother-in-law, Bill, along with my sister-in-law, sat quietly, observing my anguish for what felt like an eternity. Over 10 minutes passed without a word of comfort. The silence was deafening, filled with the stark reality of the situation. Eventually, after gathering enough resolve, I lifted my head and sought to regain my composure. It was then that Jesse delivered the news that shattered any flicker of hope that remained. He wanted me to leave our home. Desperation filled my voice as I pleaded with him not to follow through with his decision. I tried to convey the depth of my fear at the thought of leaving, of being separated from him. But he remained unwavering, standing firm in his resolve. He warned me that if I did not leave, he would take the step of leaving himself, and any further communication would be conducted through his attorney. The recognition of the gravity of my actions settled heavily on me. I understood that this situation stemmed from my own shortcomings. In a moment of vulnerability, I asked Jesse where I should go if I were to leave. His indifference pierced through my already fragile state. He simply stated that he did not care where I would end up, only that he wished to be free of me. At that moment, I looked to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, hoping they would offer me refuge or a place to stay, but their glances held a mixture of disappointment and disapproval. They remained silent, unwilling to intervene in what seemed to be a family matter that had spiraled out of control. Feeling defeated, I retreated to the bedroom to gather a few of my belongings. Each item I picked up felt like a tiny piece of my shattered life. When I emerged, I informed Jesse that I had decided to leave and cautiously asked if it would be possible for me to return the following day. He agreed but stipulated that my return should be after he got home from work, a condition that felt like an extension of the emotional distance that had grown between us. In search of solace, I sought refuge at the home of a close friend and colleague, a woman who had always been a supportive presence in my life. As the night unfolded, we spent hours dissecting my situation. Her understanding deepened by her own past experiences. She recounted a time where she had faced a similar challenge. A one-night indiscretion had led to a painful unraveling in her marriage. Although her husband had chosen to reconcile initially, the cracks in their relationship widened over time, leading to an eventual divorce. I listened intently, the parallels resonating deeply within me, realizing that while my situation was unique, the emotional turmoil was painfully familiar. The following day brought little relief. As I picked up the phone to speak with Jesse, the weight of what was to come hanging heavy in the air. Our conversation was brief, but we agreed to meet at our house at 6 p.m. When I arrived, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were once again present. The sight of them reinforced the tension in the room. I requested a private conversation with Jesse, but he insisted that they remain as witnesses to the discussion. My heart sank further as I tried to assure him that I would never purposefully harm him, though his stern and disapproving gaze told me he was not easily swayed. In that moment, Jesse informed me of his decision to initiate divorce proceedings and revealed that he had already hired a lawyer. A wave of despair crashed over me, and I felt the tears well up once more, struggling to keep my composure. He explained that, although we would continue living in the same house during the divorce process, it would be strictly as roommates, without the connection of a married couple that we once shared. Despite my fervent pleas to reconsider, he remained resolute, his determination seemingly unshakable. Jesse then shared that he needed space, wanting me to find alternative accommodation for the next week, as he required time to clear his mind and did not wish for me to be around. The revelation that he had spoken to our 3 children earlier that day rattled me. He had shared the details of our situation with them, and they had expressed their willingness to let me stay with them if I found the courage to face them. I asked him why he chose to inform them without my presence. To which he replied that they needed to comprehend the reasons behind our impending separation. I insisted that divorce was not the only option and that we could work through our issues, as my love for him was unwavering, but he simply reiterated his decision. He remarked in a cold tone that while it had been good while it lasted, it was now time to end it. That evening, I stayed at my eldest daughter's apartment, seeking temporary solace from the chaos of my life. My son and youngest daughter joined us there, and the atmosphere was charged with anger and disappointment as they voiced their feelings about the situation. Tension simmered until around 11 p.m. when, gradually, we found a moment of reconciliation, exchanging hugs and affirming our love for one another. I agreed to spend 2 or 3 nights at each of their homes, relying on their support until Jesse would allow me to return home. Now, as I sit on my daughter's couch in the quiet of her apartment with her at work, I find myself reflecting on the tumultuous events that have transpired. I am writing this in hopes of finding insight, seeking advice from others who have faced similar crossroads in their relationships. I am particularly interested in hearing from women who, after years of marriage, experienced infidelity. How did you navigate the aftermath? Were you able to repair your marriage, and if so, what steps did you? I wish to provide a comprehensive and thorough update regarding my current situation. First and foremost, it is essential to clarify that I have never engaged in infidelity in the past and have no intentions of doing so in the future. I do not grapple with gambling issues or any form of addiction. I have not been in contact with Nate and have no plan to reach out to him. However, I feel compelled to express my sincere apologies to Nate's wife for the distress this situation may have caused her. I genuinely cannot explain how she came to possess those pictures and videos. In response to health concerns, I recently conducted an at-home STD test and am fully prepared to share the results with my husband. I want to unequivocally state that Jesse is the indisputable father of my 3 children, and I do not wish to entertain any misguided assumptions to the contrary. I must apologize for the delay in providing this update, but the emotional turmoil I have been navigating has made it challenging to communicate effectively. On a positive note, I have some uplifting news to report. Jesse and I are still married. Our journey has been fraught with obstacles, but I have made substantial sacrifices to convince him to remain in our marriage. After considerable discussion and deliberation, he finally consented in late October, and we have since finalized all necessary legal documentation. Now, prepare yourself for the revelation of my unconventional choices. My desperation to preserve my marriage with Jesse, a relationship that means everything to me, led me to agree to a postnuptial arrangement. This agreement essentially reduces my entitlement to our shared assets from the typical 50% to a mere 25% in the event of a divorce. It is crucial to note that our real estate holdings would still be divided equally at a 50-50 split, but other assets, including savings, stocks, and 401k plans, would be divided disproportionately at 75-25. Furthermore, I have agreed to waive any claim to alimony. The sole condition of this agreement is that we must remain married and cohabitate for a minimum of 1 year. In addition to these financial concessions, I have permitted Jesse to pursue a one-sided open relationship, allowing him the freedom to seek companionship outside our marriage while I remain monogamous. I initially sought to negotiate a more balanced arrangement, perhaps allowing for a temporary free pass or a limited 3-month agreement given that my indiscretion was a one-night stand, but Jesse was firm, insisting on a permanent arrangement without any compromise. Finding legal representation for such an atypical agreement proved to be a challenge, as many attorneys declined to participate upon hearing the details. Ultimately, I succeeded in locating an attorney willing to assist me, and we have finalized the arrangements. As for the state of my relationship with Jesse, it can best be described as extremely cold. We inhabit the same space but exist more as roommates than as a married couple. Our feelings for each other, albeit still present, have become strained due to the recent upheaval. Jesse has expressed a profound dislike toward me, though he refrains from using the term hate. Following the revelation of my mistake, he has begun coming home later than usual, deliberately avoiding time spent with me. He even refuses to accept any acts of kindness or care, including meals I prepare, stating his distrust of me to the extent that he won't consume food from an open package, which is both puzzling and disheartening. My feelings for him remain deep, my love for him surpasses even my own self-interest and is greater than life itself. Yet, it appears that he is choosing to overlook nearly a quarter of a century of shared history over one momentary lapse in judgment. At this point, I feel the necessity to express my overwhelming emotions. I simply want my husband back to the way he used to be before this incident disrupted our lives. In terms of physical intimacy, our connection has essentially evaporated. There have been no kisses, hugs, or cuddling. We now sleep in separate rooms. Jesse did allow me to give him a back massage in September, but he insisted on using a barrier for protection, ensuring that no intimacy was involved. After that brief physical interaction, he returned to the master bedroom, leaving me alone in the guest room where I am currently residing. There was no acknowledgement of gratitude or affection, no kiss, no thank you, just silence. As for whether Jesse has utilized the terms of our open marriage, that remains uncertain and a source of concern for me without clarity or communication between us. The emotional weight of this entire situation is difficult to bear, and I find myself longing for resolution and a return to the connection we once shared. I cannot definitively state that he has engaged in any form of infidelity, and frankly, I hope he never does. The thought of him being with another woman is something that weighs heavily on my mind, as it would completely shatter my emotional state. I understand that this may come across as selfish, but it's essential to convey just how much he means to me. He is my partner, and my desire is for him to be exclusively mine. The bond we share is profound, and I am prepared to go to great lengths to protect it. This feeling encapsulates my thoughts for the time being, and I genuinely welcome your perspectives on this matter. Although some of you might perceive my feelings as irrational, my husband is incredibly important to me, prompting me to make sacrifices to ensure our relationship remains intact. In the interest of providing an update, a significant amount of time has passed since my last communication, and I have received numerous inquiries regarding my situation. Unfortunately, I must report that my marriage did not withstand the challenges we faced. Jesse and I have officially divorced, with the final settlement taking place on August 17th. Our relationship had deteriorated to the point where we were merely coexisting as roommates without any intimacy for the past 4 months. One day, Jesse broached the subject, expressing that, despite caring for me deeply, he no longer felt in love. He indicated a desire to explore relationships with other women, yet he was reluctant to engage in that pursuit while still married to me, even though I had previously given my consent for such an arrangement. His internal struggle led him to the conclusion that it would be best to terminate our marriage swiftly, dividing our shared assets and parting ways. Despite my attempts to persuade him against this decision, he remained resolute. This period was incredibly difficult for me, leading me into a profound emotional turmoil. Surprisingly, Jesse offered me support throughout this challenging time. Once I conceded to the divorce and began the process, Jesse seemed to experience a sense of relief. With the divorce proceedings initiated, he began to open up more and spend time with me, maintaining a strictly platonic relationship. We reached a mutual decision to sell our home prior to finalizing the divorce, and to our amazement, it sold in just 6 days back in March. Following the sale, we entered into a 6-month lease for a luxury apartment, which is due to expire on October 1st. Remarkably, despite the circumstances that led us to this point, we have been cohabiting amicably. The atmosphere within our new neighborhood feels refreshing, liberating even, especially in comparison to the discomfort we experienced in our previous environment. In terms of our mutual acquaintances, it is worth mentioning that Nate and his wife also faced marital issues, ultimately leading to their divorce. Nate has since moved to Laughlin, where he is currently employed at a store within a casino. I had the opportunity to extend a personal apology to Nate's wife, a task that proved to be one of the most difficult challenges I have ever faced. My anxiety made it hard for me to express myself, yet she was gracious and accepted my apology. It became evident that Nate had a pattern of similar behaviors, having previously engaged in infidelity on multiple occasions. Additionally, I learned that he is in recovery from alcoholism and a gambling addiction. The reason Nate's wife had us captured on film stemmed from her suspicions that he had resumed his gambling and drinking habits. This forced her to hire a private investigator to keep him under surveillance for 3 days. Sadly, the combination of the affair and Nate's ongoing struggles contributed to her gaining full custody of their 2 daughters, aged 13 and 14. Remarkably, she expressed gratitude for this outcome amid the chaos of the situation, which leaves me reflecting on how I inadvertently became involved with someone like that. Returning to the focus of my life with Jesse, since our move and the divorce, we have been rekindling our connection. We have started sharing meals again and have even enjoyed a couple of dates since settling into our new apartment. Recently, we took a significant step and became intimate once more. An experience that was spontaneous and undoubtedly the most fulfilling moment I have ever shared with him. I am confident that Jesse felt equally satisfied. He made it clear that we are not in a committed relationship at this point, we are simply dating. This understanding brings me a sense of contentment that is hard to describe. It is an exhilarating feeling, reminiscent of being 19 years old again. I feel as though I am riding a natural high, an intoxicating blend of excitement and joy that is difficult to articulate. However, there is a complication in the situation that needs addressing. Jesse has recently purchased a house in Pahrump, a small town located approximately 60 miles away from Las Vegas. He wanted a reprieve from the relentless pace of city life, seeking a more tranquil existence in an area characterized by its small-town atmosphere and conservative values. While I wished he might extend an invitation for me to move in with him, he has not yet done so. I took the initiative to ask him if he would be comfortable with me relocating to Pahrump as well. He responded that he had no objections. I have taken the time to explore the town, but I discovered that there are very few apartment options available for rent. As a result, I am now contemplating the purchase of a used RV. Jesse's new home is situated on 3 acres of land, and conveniently, there are 2 designated spots available for RVs that are equipped with full hookups, located roughly 200 feet from his house. He has mentioned that I could park there if I choose to take that route, but we would need to formalize a lease agreement, and I would be required to pay rent to him. I am completely fine with this arrangement. However, Jesse has stressed that this does not mean we are getting back together and made it clear that he plans to continue dating other women. He does not want me to feel jealous about this situation, and I reassured him that I am perfectly okay with it. My determination is to treat him so wonderfully that he won't have any desire to seek out anyone else. In response to the women who have been voicing criticisms of my husband and making accusations related to toxic masculinity, I kindly ask that you reconsider your stance. The reality is that this entire situation is unequivocally my fault, and I fully take responsibility for everything that has occurred. I am simply grateful to Jesse, as well as to the grace of the Almighty, for granting me a second chance at love and in life. I sincerely wish all the best to everyone involved. Now, let's shift our focus to another compelling story. My husband, who is 32 years old, has expressed a desire to end our seemingly happy 6-year marriage due to a mistake I made in the past. This mistake occurred during a time when he was unemployed, and it is now coming back to affect our family. I am a 28-year-old woman who did not come from a wealthy background, however, I have always aspired to achieve a better life. Given my financial struggles, I initially believed that pursuing a college education was out of reach. That changed when a friend introduced me to the sugar baby lifestyle. At first, the concept of an older man financially supporting me in exchange for my companionship and affection was repugnant. Nevertheless, my strong desire to attend college led me to reassess this option, particularly because my academic performance did not qualify me for scholarships. During my college years, I became involved with a sugar daddy who covered my tuition, rent, and other expenses. Once I graduated and landed a decent job, I made the conscious decision to sever all ties with my sugar daddies, focusing solely on establishing my career. They had served their purpose, and I no longer required their financial support. Later on, I met my current husband at an event hosted by a mutual friend. The connection we shared was immediate, and after dating for a year, he proposed to me. We were married 6 months later. I chose not to disclose my past to him, hoping that he would never find out. Early in our engagement, we mutually agreed that I would be a stay-at-home wife and mother during our marriage, a role that I embraced wholeheartedly. In 2019, my husband experienced a layoff, and the onset of COVID-19 restrictions made it exceedingly difficult for him to secure new employment. As a result, our financial situation at home began to tighten. I confided in my best friend about the challenges we faced in a lighthearted way. During that conversation, she nostalgically reminisced about the days when we had men willing to fully support us. After a few drinks, we found ourselves browsing sugar dating websites. Although I created an account that day, I refrained from engaging with potential sugar daddies for approximately 3 weeks. While I recognized that what I did was wrong, my decision stemmed from a desire to ensure that my family could continue living the lifestyle to which we had grown accustomed. I recently found myself in a complicated situation when I reconnected with an old sugar daddy through the same website we had previously used. Our relationship quickly resumed its transactional nature, leading to enjoyable vacations and experiences that I kept hidden from my husband. To cover my tracks and avoid raising suspicion, I concocted an elaborate story about a long-lost grand aunt who was gravely ill and desired to meet her family. Whenever I returned from these trips or received unexpected financial gifts, I attributed them to this fictitious grand aunt, claiming they were generous contributions intended for me. When my husband began to ask too many questions about this mysterious relative, I reassured him that I would introduce them once she recovered. I assured him that I didn't want to overwhelm her with visitors during her illness. This deception persisted for nearly a year, until my husband found steady employment, prompting me to end my relationship with the sugar daddy. I attempted to erase any trace of him from my life as if he had never existed, but this effort was in vain. Just yesterday, my husband stumbled upon old text messages that I had believed I had successfully deleted, revealing the truth about my past. When he confronted me, I tried to explain that my actions were driven by a desire to protect our family's financial stability. However, he was unwilling to listen and resorted to using hurtful language to express his anger and disappointment. The situation escalated further when he decided to contact my father, inquiring about the supposed grand aunt. As this family member did not exist, my husband's inquiry only deepened the rift between us and heightened the tension in our already strained relationship. His response to the discovery was severe. He threatened to evict me from our home and demanded a DNA test for our son. Fearing for my safety due to his recent behavior, I sought refuge at my parents' house. In this vulnerable moment, I confessed to my family that I had lied about receiving a college scholarship, revealing instead that it had been funded by an older man. This truth stunned and saddened them, leaving them grappling with the consequences of my decisions. They advised me to wait until my husband calmed down, hoping for a chance to have a rational discussion. My mind was plagued with questions about how I could have been so wrong in my choices. I believed my actions were ultimately for the benefit of our family, so how could I be in the wrong? How could I possibly work toward repairing my marriage after such a significant breach of trust? Following the DNA test, which confirmed that my husband was indeed the father of our son, I hoped for a glimmer of reconciliation. Instead of acknowledging his premature accusations, he filed for divorce and sought full custody of our child. In just 5 weeks, he managed to turn both of our families against me. My parents expressed their disappointment and even went as far as to kick me out of their home. My father essentially disowned me for what they perceived as my dishonesty. Their claims that I had lied and withheld the whole truth felt overwhelming. To me, it seemed irrelevant. It was all in the past. I struggled to understand why everyone seemed to be siding with him. Especially since he was the one attempting to dismantle our family and take our son away, all due to a mistake I made years ago. Ironically, I believed I had acted out of love and care for our family. I intended to alleviate the stress my husband faced during his period of unemployment. Things took an even darker turn when he hired a private investigator to uncover details of my past for the custody battle. I recognize that I have made mistakes throughout my life, but I am a devoted mother, and questioning my character based on my past choices feels utterly unjust. The court appeared to side with my husband. They suggested that my previous lifestyle posed a risk to our son, resulting in my being granted only supervised visitation on weekends. In a matter of weeks, I found myself stripped of everything that mattered: my son, my family, my home. I was left with nothing. I had hoped to secure primary custody and receive child support, but the reality of my situation was far from my expectations. My actions have filled me with deep shame and embarrassment. Yet I cannot help but feel that this should not justify the disintegration of a once happy family. To the anonymous individuals who condemn me and assert that I got what I deserved, I ask you to consider this. You have no understanding of the challenges I faced at that time. The choices I made were difficult but necessary to keep our family financially stable without accruing debt. How can you pass judgment without sharing my experiences? All I want is for my family to return to what it once was. My fiancé, a 25-year-old man, and I, a 24-year-old woman, had recently made a mutual decision to embark on separate bachelor and bachelorette trips alongside our friends. We thought it would be a fun way to celebrate our upcoming wedding while enjoying time apart with those close to us. Little did we anticipate, however, that our paths would intertwine in an unforeseen and tumultuous manner. Both of our groups decided to head to the same vibrant city for our respective trips. Complications arose when my fiancé unexpectedly discovered me sharing a kiss with another man during my bachelorette celebration, a moment that shattered our plans and ultimately led him to call off our wedding. Our history stretches back to childhood. We have known each other for as long as we can remember. We began our journey together in the same kindergarten, continued to navigate our way through high school, and, ultimately, became high school sweethearts. Maintaining our relationship during college proved challenging yet rewarding, as we were committed to each other, even across the miles that separated us. Throughout our years together, I remained dedicated to him, never engaging in romantic relationships with anyone else. Our connection strengthened over time, and he proposed to me just a year ago. In our excitement, we dove headfirst into planning our wedding, marking a date on the calendar and dreaming of our future together. A month ago, my female friends inadvertently included me in a group chat intended for my surprise bachelorette party. Initially, their plan revolved around a visit to a strip club set for the day before our wedding. However, I expressed my discomfort with the idea of strippers being involved in my celebrations. In light of this, we decided to pivot and create an alternative plan: a girls' getaway to New Orleans. This idea was inspired by the popular movie Girls Trip, which resonated with our hopes of reconnecting and reliving the carefree joy of our younger days. Given our busy lives, opportunities to bond as friends had become scarce. After discussing this change with my fiancé, he happily agreed. His best man, upon hearing about our trip, decided to orchestrate a similarly themed outing for my fiancé and his friends. My adventure commenced 4 days before the guys' trip, and my fiancé kindly dropped me off at the airport. The beginning of our girls' trip was relatively low-key, featuring sightseeing and well-planned nights out. However, as the days progressed, we grew increasingly adventurous and open to trying new experiences. While our antics were never reckless, they were undoubtedly enjoyable. Throughout this time, I maintained communication with my fiancé, sharing snippets of my experiences, while he reciprocated by updating me on his own journey. One fateful night, during a gathering with new friends and after a few drinks, we engaged in playful games that led to a dare. I was challenged to kiss a particularly attractive, shirtless man we had just met. Caught up in the fun of the moment and encouraged by those around us, I complied. What began as a simple kiss quickly escalated, with me ending up seated on this man's lap, my legs wrapped around him as we shared a deep kiss, all while a small crowd cheered us on. It was in this compromising position that my fiancé entered the scene, witnessing the culmination of our lighthearted evening. His reaction was immediate and intense. After pulling me away from the man, he dragged me to the side, demanding an explanation. Accusations of infidelity flew, and I tried to convey that this was merely a spur-of-the-moment dare, a harmless act rather than an affair. Alas, his anger only escalated as he resorted to name-calling. When I questioned how he could speak to me in such a manner, he fired back, asking what else to call someone who engages with strangers in such a way. I found myself speechless, grappling with disbelief at the situation unfolding before me. As he stormed off, I felt a mixture of regret and confusion, torn between wanting to follow him and my friend's suggestion to give him space and allow him to cool off until the following day. Waking up the next morning, I resolved to reach out and mend things with him, fully prepared for a heartfelt conversation. However, when I contacted his friends, I learned that he had abruptly cut his trip short, leaving us only a few days from his scheduled return. My attempts to call him were met with silence, and it quickly became apparent that he had blocked my number, deepening my feelings of helplessness. In the days that followed, I decided to honor his need for space while extending my trip by a few days, hoping to find clarity and perhaps an opportunity to reconnect. Given that we lived together, I made intermittent attempts to reach him, and eventually, he took my call. Despite my eagerness to explain, he interrupted me with definitive words. The wedding was off, and he didn't want any further contact from me. Shocked and desperate for an explanation, I hurriedly made my way back home, hoping for a face-to-face conversation that could clear the air. Upon my return to our apartment, I was met with the devastating reality that he had changed the locks. A wave of disbelief washed over me, leaving me questioning how a simple kiss, an unintended moment of folly during a fun night out, could lead to such a dramatic upheaval in our lives. This single act occurred in a moment of drunken mischief, but I had never envisioned it would result in the dissolution of our love and plans for a future together. Frustration overwhelmed me, leading me to take the drastic step of contacting his workplace. He had not been answering any of my calls on his cell phone, which left me feeling confused and anxious about what was happening. When I reached him, the conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument that revolved around critical issues, the sudden decision to change the locks and the upcoming bachelorette party that had seemed so innocent just days before. As emotions ran high, he revealed that he had taken decisive action by delivering all of my belongings to my parents' house. He had also informed them that our wedding was off, leaving me in a state of disbelief. With a stern tone, he warned me not to reach out to him either at work or personally, which only intensified my feelings of rejection and betrayal. In the aftermath of our confrontation, I sought comfort and perspective from my mother, who offered a possible explanation for his behavior. She suggested that he might be experiencing cold feet, which could account for his dramatic reaction to what seemed like a minor issue between us. In contrast, his parents, who had always treated me like their own daughter, chose to remain uninvolved, believing that the decisions regarding our relationship should rest solely with us. Despite the tension, he eventually agreed to meet face-to-face to discuss the future of our relationship. During this meeting, he articulated his fears about entering marriage with someone he suspected could jeopardize our bond for the sake of fleeting fun or the approval of others. He specifically mentioned the prospect of infidelity, expressing that he could not bear the thought of being with someone who would cheat on him and potentially subject him to public humiliation. Hearing these accusations was devastating. It was hard to grasp how he could level such strong claims at me over what amounted to a single kiss. As we continued our conversation, I tried to steer the discussion towards our wedding plans and the financial investments we had already made. My friends had relayed to me that he had indicated I shouldn't worry about losing his deposits, which only heightened my sense of anxiety. It was clear that he was resolute in his decision to end things between us, and in a moment of desperation, I told him I was pregnant, even though it was a complete fabrication. His response was shockingly cold and detached. He insisted on a DNA test before he would even consider taking any responsibility, claiming that he had lost trust in me entirely. This revelation brought me to my breaking point. Devastated by his words, I reacted impulsively, slapping him in frustration before storming away. I was left in a state of bewilderment and pain, grappling with the reality that this man, with whom I had shared over 2 decades of my life, could end our relationship based on what I perceived to be a minor indiscretion. It left me questioning whether I had overlooked critical signs of trouble or if I had, in some fundamental way, done something terribly wrong that led us down this tragic path.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.